anyone, especially who's within your company, recognizes the effort that you put in early on. No one likes the person that comes in and just like jumps to the top, but really doesn't have that experience, and that experience pays off. Like that knowledge you can only learn by doing that, and it's no different than it's repetition, right? You just got to do it 300 times to be really excel at it. Same with calling people. You got to get on the phone. You got to make calls. You got to talk to people. You got to meet people, and then it just becomes fluid. But yeah, that was an important part of me. I did that for a full year, and it sucked. Like, it wasn't fun. I was making dog shit money, and Matt would be like, "Well, that was what you should have got paid," but it was probably lower than what I should have got paid. And but then I was able to transition into my next role, which was vital. So I wasn't going in completely with a blank slate of not knowing how to talk to people, what they wanted to hear. And then being in that lower role, you gotta ask questions. You gotta ask, and it's not just from the person you want their position, but other people in the company that you're in. Is you want to know all parts of the business, because the well-rounded individual that knows all is gonna go to the top. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it.
Welcome to this episode of Pucks to Properties. We got Tom, the Enforcer Mealy. I don't know, we just made that name up right now, but we also have Tom Fenton, his goalie. So we are going back in AIC. This is college days. So we're going to see exactly how good Tom Mealy was, if he could hit the net, if he's a headhunter, what really type of player is he? But anyway, Tom Fenton, welcome to the podcast. Tom Mealy, why the hell do we do this?
Bob, no sponsors, no. Whoa,
oh shit, that's right. I'm getting a little, excited to see I never played with you. I've never seen you as a on the ice. So I have no idea. I'm really excited to see what kind of player you really are. Not what you tell us you are, what you really are. But anyway, sponsors. Podcast is brought to you by Riva Global, which is a premier virtual assistant staffing company. So they staff and place virtual assistants in any different realm, but specifically on the real estate side, marketing side, anything in real estate, and also from Perch Rock, which is our real estate investment company. So back to that. Mealy, why the hell do we do this?
Well, we do this podcast because we don't want to ride buses anymore. We don't want to go to the rink anymore. We don't want to be on the ice, but we want to give back to the game and help guys transition from the locker room into business. Specifically, this podcast is a real estate platform, but Tom is somebody that I've known for a while, and believe it or not, I don't know if he knows this, I leaned on him pretty heavily, when I was done playing, and there is that lull for guys that are getting out of sports, whether it be guys that are on the show, NHL guys played in the Olympics all the way down to the Southern Pro League, and at some point in life, the game is over, and you have to prepare for that next chapter of life. And I remember what that was like. And 3 years later, I'm in a completely different place, and I'm grateful for everything the game gave me, and I'm also grateful for knowing people like you guys that were in my shoes one day and helped me with that transition. So that's why we do this.
Very cool. Look at you, kiss ass. I love it. But let's peel it back a little bit. So, Tom, you've worked for Matt Schimenti, worked for Schimenti Construction as a director of business development. We'll go over, obviously your story, but we had Matt on the podcast a while back, and he owns, obviously the company is growing. We were talking before this, really impressive growth. Again, AIC connections. But Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself. And a lot of people that are watching this don't know what a director of business development is or does. So just give us a little rundown. But before that, you played AIC goalie from 2005 to 2009 with Tom Mealy. So we got a lot to peel back. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate the kind words too, Tommy. Yeah, well, let's go back to AIC. I actually played with both Mealy brothers, so I was very fortunate with one of those. So yeah, Yeah, I landed at AIC. I grew up in Canada in Southern Ontario. Played Tier 2 Junior A up in Oakville, and then AIC was one of the schools that I was talking to. And I think, um, you know, a dumb Canadian was like, I just want to play Division I college hockey. So, a couple other Division III schools, but I had another guy who I was playing with, Mark Pavley, that was there and was really enjoying the experience and looked at the opportunity I could jump in and play right away. There's no bones about it. Like we struggled, during my whole time there. It was definitely a learning lesson. But what I think, both of you guys and anyone in hockey can say is that, like, the friendships that you make, the relationships over time. I wouldn't have. I learned a lot. Because of where I went, I got connected with Matt Schimenti. And after I was done doing my master's degree, it was like reaching out and looking for career advice, not really looking for a job because I never thought I was going to end up in the construction industry. But ever since then, and really coming into this space, I've made it a point to, no one teaches you, how to get a job or where to look for a job and who to lean on. And I think the hockey community does a great job at that and really say, hey, there's one thing we all have in common. It's like, we love the game. You're right. Everyone does end up in a beer league at some point. That's the common ground we all have. I do not play goalie anymore. I refuse to put the pads back on. But yeah, so now it's been a lot of when I get to go back to school, I tell these guys, they're like, hey, listen, play as long as you can. Obviously, it's a great experience. You can go play professionally overseas like Tommy did, or, here in North America, great. But eventually you want to start your career and you got to start making those connections and kind of planting those, those seeds in different pockets and really use that hockey community because there's a lot of powerful people that played that are in these higher up positions that will definitely want to help out. So
very good. And then, so I obviously read through all your bio. You went to graduate school after that, is that right? After AIC, and then you're helping coach there. Tell us a little bit about that transition and how the hell you got it. I know you reached out to Matt, but how did all that work? Because a lot of the transition time, I know for me, when I retired from hockey, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. So we always struggle on that side of it.
You know what? So I was down in Manhattanville. I was doing a master's of sports business management. So I thought I was going to end up being like a sports agent or, getting into some legal type of stuff. But when you're down in Westchester County, which is where Manhattanville is, you get exposed to obviously New York City. And then the area just being really prevalent to like the finance world, the real estate, commercial real estate world. And then during one of my summers, I was doing an internship at, now here we go full circle, at a company called George Comfort and Sons, which is just a property management commercial developer that owns multiple properties in Connecticut, actually some out in California, Westchester County, and a few buildings in the city. So once I finished that, I was like, well, I still need a job. And I was looking, first thing I went to, I said, all right, rather than applying online and just being another resume, I went back to my network. And I remember it was my junior year, would have been Tommy's freshman year, but that was when Matt Schimenti, our president CEO of my company, came back and spoke to our group as an alumni, saying he wanted to get involved, he wanted to improve, the financials of the hockey team specifically, and I remember that, and he remembered me simply because I reached out to him afterwards and said thank you, and that he recognized my name. So I was in the area, and I briefly said, hey Matt, I'd love to just pick your brain, let's grab a beer. And I think he appreciated the confidence of me just reaching out and saying, hey, you want to get together? So we did that. And then, I told him what I was looking to do, and he kind of pulled me into his like golf club, country club inner circle of guys he knows from real estate, hedge funds, finance, yada, yada, yada. And I routinely was just kind of hanging out with the C-suite presidents, some powerful individuals in their respective industries. And, he just liked that I could hold a conversation, look people in the eye, be confident. And those skills that we all learn, those aren't developed in school. Like those are developed in the dressing room, leadership roles, on teams. And that's what he recognized in me. And then, he told me, he's like, we're going to put you the worst position in the company, which was an estimating coordinator, just to really learn the language, get comfortable talking on the phones with subcontractors, which I tell every intern that comes in here now. It's like, that's where I started, and that was 12 years ago. And then I transitioned into business development. And you asked the question, like, what is business development? So business development essentially works with our leadership group and how do we grow the business. So when I started here, we were, I think Matt lied to me, but he says we were doing X. I think we were doing about 125 million when I started in revenue on an annual basis, and then we just came off of our strongest year doing around 350 million in revenue, and probably next year we're going to be around 385 when this year is all done, and then there's a goal to go 405 and larger from there on out. So my day-to-day is reaching out and finding new opportunities, finding companies that align with our service in areas that we build, which is the commercial sector, and then retail, hospitality within that. So it's been interesting. It's a lot of calling. It's a lot of speaking to people. So you got to be comfortable with, coming up with anything with a stranger, finding a common ground, and then pitching our team as a viable candidate for what they do every day. So it's been a great kind of run, and I look forward to what our company is continuing to doing by going to a new office down in Rybrook. We open up an office out in California. Our New York City presence continues to expand. So very happy with the connections I made.
Nice. There's a lot to unpack there for sure. But let's talk a little bit about the hockey connection. Let's keep going with that, because we talked offline about this, about moving offices. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's kind of funny, important. I believe Peters, was he a Trinity guy?
Yeah. So when we were first looking at a new New York City office, we outgrew our space at 622 Third, and I mentioned to Matt, who I kind of work with every day, I said, have you met this guy, Peter Duncan? He's the CEO of George Comfort and Sons, which I, was an intern with many, many, many moons ago. No. So I put those two together. We end up leasing a space with them at 575 Lexington Avenue, a beautiful space. But Matt, I think, was really appreciative of the relationship that he quickly, came himself having with Peter, and like a real trust factor. And again, common ground. They're both hockey guys. So it's just, I think everyone knows when you meet a hockey guy, you quickly connect with someone like that. So again, we're outgrowing our Connecticut office here, and we were looking, kind of service mapping where would be a good fit. And the intent was that we got to connect both offices a little bit better, just and for people to get from A to B. So while we were looking, I was like, well, we should look with George Comfort Sons again, and here we are. I think our last deal with them was 5 or 6 years ago. Now we're going to do another office deal with them, and beautiful space in Rybrook, New York, and we're thrilled about that. But it all started with that hockey connection up top of these two guys. That one guy went to Trinity, one guy went to schools, or half an hour, 45 minutes from each other. Yep. But like a lot of common ground and a lot of name dropping that they all. It seems like you throw out two names, and then it's like the Kevin Bacon effect. Someone knows somebody that you know.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the parts I actually want to take a step back at, because I think it's important when Matt spoke to your team, right? And then you remembered him. You had the balls, and I think this is very, very important because I remember going back. When I went to BU, and we at that time did not have individuals come in and speak, right? It was all about making the NHL. It was a lot different time. I think they're a lot different now. I talked to a couple of the assistant coaches now, because Pandolfo is my college roommate. He's head coach now. So we talked a little bit about going back to give back to obviously the hockey players now. But Matt speaking to you and you having the balls to go and reach out after, actually, first and foremost, thanking him for doing that right speech. I think that's a huge takeaway for anybody listening to this, to say, hey, you have to always – and there's two things. Number one, looking in the eye. This is something my dad always taught me when I was younger. And he said, listen, and not everybody does that. He's like, hey, and he highlighted it. A lot of hockey players have that trait of shaking hands and looking in the eye. And I think that is something that is freaking, like, everybody's got to do it. And I think it's really, really important. So Tom, I know you want to talk a little bit about that side of it, about the impact and how that works.
Yeah.
We'll let you take that away a little bit.
Well, interpersonal skills, right?
Yeah.
Etiquette, things like that. But that starts obviously at a young age, and I think it was my parents that instilled that in me, especially my father. And the same thing like you were just mentioning. Looking someone in the eye, shaking their hand firmly. That stuff people remembers. People also remember the weak handshake or the floppy.
Oh, yeah.
No one like that.
The fish hand, right?
Yeah, or the
hand.
doorknob. It's very very awkward. But yeah, and then another thing that was just like when you meet somebody or you come across a presentation, which I do now, going to conferences, is like thank them for their time. I mean, they're taking their time out of their schedule, and they might be getting paid for it, but it's important to acknowledge that because it does take a little bit of balls, as you mentioned, but what do you have to lose at that point? And that's a huge thing that if anyone listens to this is go up and take that chance, because what's the worst that can actually happen to you in the long run? So I do that with everything now. That's a part of my day to day, whether I make a call, right? It's no different than dating. Yeah. I mean, for Tommy probably could listen to this a couple of times, but like, if you go out with some, girl, like you don't go at her, immediately, like give it a day or two and then reach out and say, thanks for your time. I mean, but it goes, I just had a client call the other day with a group that we're going to be doing some work with on the West Coast. And, we talked afterwards. It was like, all right, when's the appropriate time to reach out? But really appreciate what, they were open to having a conversation with us. And I'm telling you, people kind of overlook that stuff. But with my success that I've had in the industry that I'm in, I know that people are appreciative of it, just saying, thank you. So.
And something small that's actually big too, because talk about a handshake, but also after every season, I've always thanked coaches. Guess what? We don't always like our coaches. Let's call it what it is. But the coaches remember you when you're done, and then you say thank you. You look them in the eye, you give them a handshake, firm handshake, and just say thank you. It doesn't have to be, it could be somebody you somewhat like, but you leave on good terms. And I think never burning a bridge, I think, is really important, because sometimes we fuck that up in the hockey world.
You know what I think of now that you mention that is like what goalies do, or some goalies do anyways. Like I was always best friends with the referee, right? Like, hey, you need a drink of water at the end of the game. Either I got lit up or if
I was not. I was not.
Yeah, well, yeah, depending. I don't think Tommy was. How many times he got in the penalty box too? But but they remember. These guys are on the same circuit. You're going to see them again. And the coaching world's just as small, right? Like if you have a bad reputation, these coaches all talk to one another, right? So you have to, you got to put things, your personal issues aside and be respectful, because you are going to have some disagreements along the way. But yeah, be professional. You're your own brand, right? So people want to remember, even if they don't remember the company I work for, Schimenti, they'll be like, oh, that Tom Fenton was a good guy. And who knows where they end up. And then next thing you know, it could be 5-10 years down the line. And, I spark up a conversation and they'll probably have positive things to say about me.
Yeah. I know, Tommy, I know you got a bunch of questions there, so we'll let you take it away for a bit.
Thank you. I'll say thank you for transitioning that way. Your day to day. Let's talk about that really quick right now. Are you? I know me. I'm on the phone a lot. It's a lot of phone. It's a lot of email. Yeah. When you're prospecting, is this a book of business that you've built yourself? Are you piggybacking off of team leads that are basically saying you should reach out to these people and essentially see if we could drive some sort of relationship here? And essentially, it's a two-part question. There's that, and then there's also staying competitive against other people in your industry that are probably maybe reaching out to the same individuals that you are. What are you doing to separate yourself, and do you find yourself right now having that competitive edge from hockey transitioning into the business world?
Yeah. Well, let me start with the last question there. Is simple as yes. I think being competitive helps me in my day to day. I want to win. A lot of working on the front end of the business, it's winning work. There's three parts. It's winning work, doing work, keeping score, which is our accounting group, which I don't like diving into. But yeah, the winning aspect is huge, and it takes a collection of individuals. It's not just me reaching out to get an opportunity. We have to price it. We have to work with our subcontractors. We have to figure out what buttons are, the client, are, what we have to push and avoid. So yeah, there's a huge competitive. Now, as it relates to our competitors, I think a big thing is just worrying about ourselves. Like we actually track everyone who we go up against, which I think is good. And then when we see some individuals we don't like going up against, whether like we're not on the same playing field, we'll tell the client that we're like, we don't know this guy, and we're probably not going to be competitive, or we're going to be, a different price because they're a much smaller contractor than we are. How I go about that though, like, one thing I've tried to do, which I get feedback from clients later on, is that when we can't do something, I hate saying no to people. Like, especially as a guy in sales and like business development growth, you want to do everything and you want that revenue to go up. And, that means hopefully, a better bonus for me at the year end. But at the end of the day, as I've matured in the role, I've understood we can't do everything. There's only so many people we have to do projects. So when I do say no, unfortunately, I give them options. And some of these options are competitors that might be a better fit, or it's timing with everything. And then vice versa, I'll reach out to our competitor saying, hey, like, we're backing off. I gave them your name for this, that you're the role. And they're very appreciative. And I've seen that come back to me, which I think is a little bit different than how some people may do my particular role. But I've probably been doing a little bit longer, and we're, still growing. So that says something to it. But yeah, like it'd be no different than in the real estate world, where it's just like a market that you guys aren't familiar with, like something in Alabama, but someone in Alabama. So rather than saying no to your client, you're like, well, let me put you in touch, with Johnny X down in Alabama. He knows the market cold. He'll do a better job. Well, you've done your job. You've basically helped out your client. You didn't have to, but that kind of stuff goes a long way.
Yep.
Now to your question about like, where is it a self-made kind of book that I've created versus, leads coming in from different, it's everything. I'm really responsible for the 20% of new business that we need to get on a year after year, because some of our clients will go up and down with their workload. So we always have to be looking out for what's new. Common phrase in our industry, it's a lot easier to keep a client than get a new client. So it's also keeping those clients happy, and people jump around. I mean, people, if let's go back to the commercial real estate world. If one guy's at Cushman one day, 5 years from now, he might be at CBRE or JLL or a smaller book. So you got to keep those relationships positive throughout. And if you keep them, things are bad. Unfortunately, with construction, it has a tendency to just like be very negative. Like the word change order happens, everyone's like, oh, it's more money, or it's construction delay. Materials are going up. There's nothing like, hey, construction's happening, it's going to run out. It's not. So like, how do you paint a picture with people to say, all right, like there's going to be problems, but we're going to trust one another. I'm going to communicate these problems on a daily basis to you. Nothing's going to be, nothing's going to hit you in the side that you weren't aware about. And having that type of communication always will create more opportunity in the long term. And then just having like, being in different areas, like, I mean, for you guys, we consider real estate kind of at the top of the river. And then it's slowly, other partners get involved, whether it's design, architectural, engineers, and then eventually you got to build the fucking thing. And then we come in. So we need to have relationships along the way, finding out when the deal's happening, or where it's happening by the building and the developer's huge, the broker community, and then also, those architectural. These guys are working on plans. So how can I help everyone on those levels is a big part of my day to day.
Very nice.
Very good. So I remember, I'm going to tell a quick story here, and it's going to transition into a question. So I remember that COVID hit, and I basically was, you came over to my apartment at that point. I don't know if you remember that, a few years ago.
Yep.
And you basically, I said to you, I was like, I don't know anyone in Connecticut. I haven't been here for the last, college plus 12 years playing.
Yeah.
I haven't been here for more than 2 or 3 months a year for the last 16 years. Like, I don't have a network here. I feel that, I've been gone for so long. I want to come back. I want to put some roots down, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, you, Langer, Matt, and who the fuck was the other guy?
Sal, maybe?
Sal.
Yeah.
Sal. I was like, you guys are like the only 4 hockey guys I know that are in business in this area. And then I remember you basically, you took time out of your day after the office one time, and you came over to my place, and you put a list together for me. You're like, I don't know what you want to do. I don't know what industry you're going to get into, but here is a list of 20 individuals that you should reach out to and communicate with, ask questions to. They're in all different walks of life, of business. They're all ex-hockey guys. And I reached out to every one of those people. I think 2 of them got back to me. I kept calling. And then eventually I came over to the office to what I thought, I don't know if you know this, I thought was a job interview. And you said to me, is like, dude, have you ever like been in a fucking office building before? Like, why are you so nervous right now? We're 3 hockey. You're in Matt's office, and we were just sitting there. I'm like, no, like, I don't even know. I'm so out of my element right now. And then, and then, you guys made me take that stupid test, which I had no idea what it was about, but I did that.
The pro scan.
Long story short, I never got a call back. I never got hired, and there was a reason for that. So it was a blessing in disguise. But I did remember that you had ex-players that you guys were interning or had hired. Do you notice a difference in the cut that those individuals coming into the industry and having success with your company are from? I'm not saying hockey players are better than someone that's applying for a job, but do you see them handling the transition a little bit better?
Well, yes and no. I think as a hockey player, especially like as you continue to grow and you're playing college or you're playing pro, your whole schedule's mapped out for you. You're almost babied, right? Like you don't get. No one tells you, like, other than showing up at this time at the office, your meals aren't planned for, your morning isn't planned for. You just got to get kind of more acclimated to work-life balance. And for people that go into an office, that's a different scenario because, like, if you're an athlete, you're kind of going to practice, to the gym, getting ready for a game, pre-game nap. Man, I miss those. Damn, I miss them. You go for that right now, but so like those people, there's a little bit of a transition. But what I do know is that any athlete, they've been balancing 2 type of careers their whole life: education, and then eventually, being an athlete. So like I laugh at kids that just go to college and that's all they do. I'm like, okay, you're a student. Like, how you should have no reason of having any bad grades versus an athlete. Like, you're putting in 40, 80 hours a week to your craft while also going to school. And I think any employer in the US recognizes that. Like, that's a big thing for, a young adolescent to stay focused on. Meanwhile, you got girls running around at college, it's parties, socializing. It's a big commitment that anyone, particularly what we all did, accomplished. So what I do see is that these individuals are better under pressure, can take criticism. And I know that's kind of changing with the new age hockey player, right? Or new age athlete. You got to be careful. And I think everyone understands how that feedback is given, but they want the feedback too. So right now I actually have an ex-AIC guy working for us, and he kind of controls our CRM, which is a customer relationship management system. For those listening to the podcast, don't know what that is. and he's flourished in it. But every year we try to get a couple interns from AIC because of the connection, and from other schools that are have a construction management degree. But the big proponent of that is that we want to keep that connection alive through our alma mater, and also give these guys an opportunity to see what working in an office is like. Because it's, Tommy, you were no different than a lot of guys that I've seen in here. They're like twiddling their thumbs, and I was like, ask questions, make yourself busy. Like, you're here for only a certain amount of time a day, make it useful. And, there's a lot of parts of in the office that can be fun where, you're bantering with, other people. So it's not quite like the locker room, but it does have some certain elements of it for sure. I forget what your other question was. I think it was about when you came in and making, the connection. One thing I pride myself on is that, like, you always got to keep growing your network. You always got to keep, meeting new people, reaching out to new people. I'm on LinkedIn daily. I try to put a goal to connect with 5 to 10 meaningful people in my industry, whether it's like on those partners of the real estate, architectural, or client community. So I really take pride in that, and then staying involved and then following up. So that would be my one criticism. If you don't hear from people, people are fucking busy. People have lives, they're working, but I think everyone will recognize persistence, and you don't want to be annoying, but you just want to make sure that you're following up and being noticed, and that's half the battle with, I think, any business. Is like, okay, I'm going to come back around in 2 weeks, I'm going to come back around in a month, 3 months, 6 months, and they have that cadence. And eventually they're just like, I got to pick up the damn phone to this guy. He really wants to talk. So, and it could be 15 minutes, but that's been a key to my success for sure.
70% of all our business that comes in is through follow-up. So it's funny you say that, because you got to keep going. And that's why all the competitors, that's why you guys are up here, and a lot of competitors are down here, because they don't follow the same systems that you do. But I want to take it. So obviously we're going at the 30-minute mark. We don't want to keep you too long. We appreciate your time, obviously, Tom. But one of the important things we did not touch upon that I wrote down, you started with Matt as an estimator from the ground, literally the bottom of the barrel.
Even lower than that. Even lower than that.
But talk to players now that are looking to transition and speak to them in the terms of it's okay to start from ground up. Because I did the same thing, dude. I door knocked for a year freaking straight, which sucked. But I wanted to learn the business from ground up. So talk to new players, or even existing players that are thinking about shit. I don't want, they think they take a step back. Talk through that kind of lens.
Well, I think, and probably you could speak to this too, Bob, but anyone, especially who's within your company, recognizes the effort that you put in early on. No one likes the person that comes in and just jumps to the top, but really doesn't have that experience. And that experience pays off. That knowledge you can only learn by doing that. And it's no different than it's repetition, right? You just got to do it 300 times to really excel at it. Same with calling people. You got to get on the phone. You got to make calls. You got to talk to people. You got to meet people. And then it just becomes fluid. But yeah, that was an important part of me. I did that for a full year, and it sucked. It wasn't fun. I was making dog shit money. And Matt would be like, well, that was what you should have got paid. But it was probably lower than what I should have got paid. And but then I was able to transition into my next role, which was vital. So I wasn't going in completely with a blank slate of not knowing how to talk to people, what they wanted to hear. And then being in that lower role, you got to ask questions. You got to ask. And it's not just from the person you want their position, but other people in the company that you're in. Is you want to know all parts of the business, because the well-rounded individual that knows all is gonna go to the top. There's no doubt about it. And you gotta. For me, it was always, we're in a very casual environment. I'm in an office. You guys are both, working from home, or, well, I don't know about you, Bob. But that's a beautiful virtual background. But but like, carrying yourself, right? Old thing that I still believe in is like dress for the job you want, not the one you have. So if you see your boss, like, and as a junior, or like when I was in estimating court, I wasn't coming in with a sport coat, but I recognized, like, in a client setting, like I didn't want to look out of place. I wanted to look like I've been there before. It's no different than your first time joining a new team, or a new league, right? You kind of want to, you don't want to stick out in a bad way. You don't want to have that, terrible suit or anything like that walking into the rink. You really want to just, be acclimated and knowing, the environment you're going into. So always like trying to push up, like really always just trying to, in any element, whether that was how you dress, how you spoke, who you were speaking to. There's a good, what is that good? It's like a quote about like the friends you keep. Like if you're hanging out with losers, you're a loser.
They're the average of the top 5 people that you hang out with. Yep.
Right. So like if you want to really be successful in your profession, like push up. Do not be sitting down with the bottom feeders. Like you want to be hanging out with the people up top and do everything that you can do, be successful in that particular environment. I would say that.
I love it. And the takeaway there is, I wrote down a bunch of quotes that will end on the end quotes, but just knowing, some of the takeaways is give before you get, right? You got to put the work in, and people do notice this. Some of the things I wrote down, everyone notices the effort you put in, and that is 100% true, because that goes back to hockey. They notice that the effort, if you put in, you're listening to podcasts, you're reading extra, you're asking questions, like you said, you're learning. That's what separates yourself.
Absolutely.
And little things like dressing for the job you want. That's a very good quote as well, because you're futuring yourself, right? You're picturing yourself in that role. So love it. Tom, what do you got to wrap it up? Actually, no, there's one other funny thing is, hold on. You did get called up to the NHL while you were getting a haircut. Hold on. Hey,
I just texted him. I was like, don't forget that part.
Yeah.
That's right. I read it on your Wikipedia page. I was like, shit, when are we going to ask this?
Yeah, it's always a good story at dinner. Had a cup of coffee with the Phoenix, now the Arizona Coyotes, at MSG. Very, very cool experience. Thankful for it. Still get like letters from, hockey card fanatics, requesting. So it's just a good laugh. Every time I get one still, like I take a picture and send it to all my buddies back in Canada. I'm like, and I always put the same thing. I'm like, legends never die. But the funny, what the real funny but sad part for me. So, that happened, honestly, shit, I want to say 15 years ago.
Was that 2011, I think? Is that right?
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, December of 2011. So coming up almost on 13 years. And it was awesome. I went back, it was literally while I was at Manhattanville College. And, it was big in the U.S., caught Sports Center. I still tell people I was the most Googled person on December 17th, 13 years ago in the world. So that's my claim to fame. But then I went back and my hometown, Canadian kid lives out his dream of playing a game in the NHL at Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. Oh, and by the way, he got a call when he was at a barber shop in White Plains. So, I mean, it's quite the story. But so anyways, I don't know if a few years ago, a guy by the name of Scott Foster, who is an accountant in Chicago, got called up and played. Well, Scott's from the same hometown as me. And so my story sucks now. My story is like, Tom, he backed up on the bench, but Scott got in there, made a couple saves, I was like, oh, it's Fozzie. I'm like, he had to one-up me one more time. So
that's great.
That's awesome. It's funny because one more thing, for a long time before they started, this was before they have a practice goalie in the area that you have to try out for, be in the stands. Before that wasn't I was just literally, I had to meet a certain criteria. This wasn't going to ruin anybody's college eligibility, because that was during that time. You couldn't steal someone from another team. So they didn't, there was 6 goalies in the area that fit this. And I just picked up the phone first. But then there was all these other guys that I knew that got into games that we all kind of either played against each other. It was very, very odd. Like there's like a small group of individuals that like are a part of this weird chain that we all been an e-bug back in the day.
That's great. Too bad you didn't qualify for the pension, huh?
No, I just got that money for one day. I think they paid for my parking, kept the jersey, but the hockey card deal was I got a couple bucks for that, so that was good.
Did you actually? You got a hockey card? I got to Google it.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's like between the pipes, one game wonder, but it's something I can brag that Tommy doesn't have. So that's what I lean on.
That's awesome. All right, so Tommy, any last parting words? Amelie, what do you got?
No, we're gonna end it on what we spoke about. Thank you for the time. Thank you for carving out 40 minutes of your day. I know you're a busy man, and we appreciate you. And it's always good to have someone local, in the area that you can bounce ideas off. So took a while to book it, but we got it done. Thanks again.
Awesome. No, I appreciate the time. Let's Tommy, let's try to tee it up before the summer's over here.
Sounds awesome. Good, and anyone who's looking for obviously putting their resume in. Tom, what's your contact info? Just find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation about it. To anyone who looking to just find different tactics of finding their job after hockey, or maybe to make a switch in careers, I'm more than welcome to talk to any hockey guy. And if you're in the area, happy to grab a beer or something, and we can shoot the shit then.
Awesome. And same goes to us. If anyone has any questions about obviously our real estate investment company is looking for, to reach out and have any advice, reach out to Tom, Tommy, and myself. And Tom, thank you very much. Appreciate the time you take out of your busy schedule, and look forward to keeping in touch. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the time, guys.